Mariah Thompson never imagined that $2 could break someone. Not break metaphorically, but literally. Legs trembling, vision blurring. The kind of break that happens when shame becomes a physical thing pressing against your chest. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March, 3:15 exactly, and she stood on the pavement of a busy road in Panmure with her 6-year-old daughter Kohai, burning with fever in her arms, expelled from a public bus for being $2 short. $2. The price of dignity in Auckland, apparently, until a black BMW X5 pulled over in front of them, and a stranger with kind eyes asked a simple question that would change everything. Support the channel by leaving your like and comment, and let's go to our story. Daniel Wright had spent the last 9 months learning how to live alone. The penthouse in Remuera, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Auckland skyline, had never felt emptier. 44 years old, founder and CEO of Wright Tech, a software development company that generated $55 million annually, and he couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed genuinely. That Tuesday morning started like all the others since the divorce. Alarm at 6, black coffee while reading financial reports, shower that lasted exactly 8 minutes, perfectly pressed navy suit, Italian leather shoes. The reflection in the bathroom mirror showed a successful man. The reflection was lying. He drove his BMW X5 through the Auckland CBD streets after a meeting with potential investors, his mind already planning the next acquisition, the next expansion, the next achievement that would fill the void for maybe 3 days before everything felt empty again. The afternoon sun was intense, harsh against the windshield, when he stopped at a red light in Panmure. That's when he saw it through his rear-view mirror. A woman being escorted off a bus by an aggressive driver. A small girl in her arms, clearly unwell, crying. The mother's face showed something Daniel recognized immediately because he'd spent years avoiding seeing it in his own mirror. Absolute humiliation. The kind that makes you want to disappear. Other passengers watched through the windows with that particular mixture of pity and relief that it wasn't happening to them. Nobody moved. Nobody offered help. The bus pulled away with a diesel cloud, leaving the woman and child on the pavement, and something in Daniel's chest tightened painfully. He'd spent 9 months since the divorce in a fog of expensive dinners and meaningless networking events, going through motions, performing the role of successful entrepreneur while feeling nothing. But watching that mother hold her sick daughter on a busy road, bags fallen at her feet, shoulders shaking, he felt something. For the first time in months, he felt something. Daniel pulled over 20 meters ahead, ignoring the honking behind him. His hands gripped the steering wheel. What was he doing? He didn't know this woman. This wasn't his problem. Auckland had social services, charities, systems for this, but when he looked in the rearview mirror again and saw her trying to gather her bags with one hand while holding the child with the other, systems and logic stopped mattering. He opened the door and stepped out. Mariah heard the car door close and instinctively pulled Kauhai closer. 8 years working in a call center had taught her to read danger in sounds. A man in an expensive suit was walking toward them. Rich, powerful, everything experience had taught her to distrust. Her sister's voice echoed in her mind. Never accept help from strange men, especially not the wealthy ones who think women are projects. She took a step back, adjusting Kauhai's weight against her hip. The girl was burning, her small body radiating heat even through Mariah's work blouse. 38.5 degrees this morning, probably higher now. The urgent care clinic in Glen Innes was 4 kilometers away, 45 minutes walking in this heat with a sick child. Impossible. "Excuse me," the man said, stopping at a respectful distance. His voice was gentle, uncertain. "I saw what happened. Are you okay? Can I help somehow?" Up close, Mariah noticed details. The suit was expensive but wrinkled, like he'd been wearing it too long. Dark circles under his eyes. Wedding ring finger tan line, but no ring. "I'm fine," she said automatically, the default response of someone who'd learned that showing vulnerability invited either pity or exploitation. We're fine. Kohai whimpered against her neck, a sound that betrayed the lie immediately. The man looked at the girl, and something in his expression shifted. Not pity, recognition. "My name is Daniel Wright," he said, reaching slowly into his jacket. Maria tensed, but he pulled out a business card and his driver's license. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm a father too. I know what it's like when kids are sick and you're desperate. Where do you need to go?" Maria looked at the card. Wright Tech, CEO. The kind of person who lived in a different New Zealand than hers. "The urgent care in Glen Innes," she heard herself say. Why was she telling him? Because Kohai's temperature was climbing, because pride doesn't reduce fever, because sometimes necessity trumps caution. "That's 15 minutes in a car," Daniel said. "Please, let me drive you. I'll call my assistant right now on speaker so you can hear I'm legitimate." He did. A woman's voice answered, bright, professional, and Daniel explained he was giving someone a ride to medical care. The assistant confirmed his identity without hesitation, even adding a cheerful, "That's very kind of you, Daniel." It was the small detail that decided it. The assistant hadn't sounded surprised. This was the kind of thing he apparently did. "Okay," Maria said quietly. "Thank you." She took a photo of his license plate with her phone and texted it to her sister with a quick message. "Emergency ride to clinic. This car, if I don't text in 30 min, call police." Daniel pretended not to notice. He opened the back door, waited while she settled Kohai in the seat, then closed it gently. The interior smelled of leather and subtle cologne. Air conditioning immediately cooled Kohai's flushed cheeks. Maria felt the girl relax slightly against her. Daniel drove carefully, not fast, obeying every speed limit. The silence stretched. Then, "What happened back there?" His voice was curious, not judgmental. "With the bus." Maria swallowed. The humiliation was still fresh, burning worse than Kohai's fever. "I had to leave work early. My daughter had a temperature at daycare. They called me to pick her up. I validated my card, but hers didn't have enough balance. I had $3.80 in coins. The fare was $5.80, $2 short." Her voice cracked on the number. $2. She'd worked 8 years, paid taxes, raised a child alone, maintained dignity through circumstances that would have broken others, and the universe had decided her worth was $2. The driver wouldn't budge, said rules are rules. Everyone just watched. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He stopped. What word existed for that? Cruel, systematic, inevitable in a society that valued regulations over human beings. That should never happen, he said finally. Inadequate, but true. They drove through Panmure, past the mix of small businesses and residential houses that characterized this part of Auckland. So different from Remuera's manicured lawns and architect-designed homes. Daniel realized he rarely drove through these areas. His life existed in a bubble: CBD offices, expensive restaurants, exclusive gym, home. Same circuit, day after day. Different New Zealand. "What do you do?" he asked, genuine curiosity replacing the awkward silence. "I'm a call center operator," Maria said. "Telecommunications company, Mount Wellington, 8 years." There was pride in her voice despite the exhaustion. 8 years of staying employed, providing, surviving. "I handle customer service complaints. Angry people calling about bills, connection issues, contract problems. Targets that are impossible to meet, metrics that measure everything except whether you actually helped anyone." She looked out the window. "But it pays the bills. Most of them. Most of the time." Daniel absorbed this. He'd complained to call centers himself, impatient when his time was wasted, demanding supervisors, treating the voice on the other end like an obstacle rather than a person. Shame flickered through him. "That must be exhausting," he said. "It is," Maria admitted. Then softer. "But it's honest work. Nobody's giving me anything. I earn it." The unspoken implication hung in the air, unlike whatever you're thinking right now about the poor, struggling woman you picked up. Daniel heard it. "I wasn't thinking that," he said quietly. "I was thinking my 12-year-old complains about his life, and he has no idea what actual hard work looks like." They reached the urgent care clinic. Daniel pulled into the parking lot. Mariah reached for the door handle immediately. "Thank you," she said, formal, distant. Building walls again now that safety was reached. Daniel felt an unexpected disappointment. "Wait," he said, pulling out his wallet. He extracted $200. "Please, for medicine or whatever she needs." Mariah's expression shuttered completely. "No." The word was absolute. "You helped us get here. That's more than enough. I don't need charity." Her voice was polite, but edged with steel. She got out, lifting Kohai from the seat. The girl stirred, opened her eyes. "Thank you, mister," she murmured, voice small and sweet. Those 3 words almost undid Daniel completely. "You're welcome, sweetheart," he managed. He looked at Mariah. "Can I at least get your number? Just to check she's okay?" It sounded like a line the moment it left his mouth. Mariah's expression confirmed it, but then Kohai coughed, a wet, concerning sound, and maternal worry overrode suspicion. "Fine," she said, and recited the digits quickly. Daniel entered them into his phone. "Mariah Thompson," she added. "Maraea, a Maori name. Beautiful." "Daniel Wright," he said, though she already knew. "I hope she feels better soon." Mariah nodded once and walked toward the clinic entrance, her daughter's head resting on her shoulder. Daniel sat in his car, watching until they disappeared inside. Then he sat for 5 more minutes, not moving, not thinking, just feeling the unfamiliar sensation of having done something that mattered, something small maybe, but real. When he finally drove home to his empty penthouse, the silence felt different, less like peace, more like absence. 3 days passed. Daniel found himself thinking about them at odd moments, during a board meeting about quarterly projections, while eating takeout alone at his dining table that seated 12, in the morning shower when he should have been planning his day. He'd saved Mariah's number under Mariah Bus and stared at it approximately 40 times without calling. What would he say? "Hi, remember the stranger who gave you a ride? Just checking if your daughter survived." Ridiculous, intrusive, exactly the kind of thing a wealthy man does when he thinks rescuing someone once gives him access to their life. But on Friday evening, while sitting in his home office pretending to review contracts, he called anyway. The phone rang 4 times. He was about to hang up when she answered. "Hello?" Cautious, screening unknown numbers probably. "Hi, Mariah. This is Daniel Wright, from Tuesday." Silence. Then, "Oh, hi." She sounded surprised, not unpleasantly so, just genuinely caught off guard. "I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to check how Kohai is doing. If she's better." More silence. Daniel grimaced. This was a mistake. "That's kind of you," Mariah said finally. "She's much better. It was a viral thing, simple. Paracetamol and rest. She's back at daycare already, driving them crazy." Relief flooded through Daniel, disproportionate to the situation. "That's good. That's really good." He should hang up now. Mission accomplished. Conscience clear. Instead, he asked, "And how are you?" The question seemed to surprise her again. "I'm fine," she said automatically. Then, after a pause, "Actually tired. It was a rough week at work. Meeting targets when you've missed a day is nearly impossible. They dock your metrics." She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "But that's not your problem. Thank you for calling. Really." She was preparing to say goodbye. Daniel panicked. "What's it like?" he asked quickly. "The call center, I mean. What's a day like?" Mariah hesitated. People didn't ask her about her work. They asked what she did, accepted the answer, moved on. Nobody wanted the details of customer service labor. "Why do you want to know?" Suspicion returning. Daniel considered lying, making it about business insight or market research. Chose honesty instead. "Because I realize I know nothing about the lives of people who actually make the economy function. I employ 80 people at Right Tech. Most are engineers, developers, well paid. But our office building has cleaners, security guards, cafe workers. I've never asked any of them what their day is like, and I think maybe that's a problem." The admission hung between them. Mariah seemed to be deciding something. "Okay," she said. "You really want to know?" "For the next 40 minutes," she told him. The 7 a.m. start time, the scripted greetings they had to deliver word perfect, the customers who screamed about bills while she checked boxes that didn't address their actual problem, the supervisor who monitored call times and marked you down if you spent too long helping someone, the 30-minute lunch break where everyone ate hurriedly at their desks because the break room was too depressing, the performance reviews based on metrics that measured efficiency but not empathy, the exhaustion of performing cheerfulness for 8 hours while absorbing anger from strangers, the wage that covered rent, food, utilities, barely, but left nothing for savings, emergencies, dreams. Daniel listened without interrupting. When she finished, he felt something like shame. Not guilt for being wealthy, he'd built his company through genuine work, but shame at his ignorance, at how he'd structured his entire life to avoid seeing this reality. "I'm sorry," he said. "That sounds impossibly hard." Maria laughed again, but this time it sounded more genuine. "It's life. Most people live some version of it. We're not special." "Maybe that's the problem," Daniel said quietly, "that we've decided most people don't deserve better than impossibly hard." They talked more. Daniel told her about his divorce. 9 months ago, his wife had left him for someone who was actually present emotionally. About his 2 children, Noah 13 and Sophie 10, who he saw every other weekend and who were becoming strangers. About the penthouse that impressed clients, but felt like a museum. About success that looked perfect in business magazines, but tasted like ash. Maria listened with the same attention he'd given her. "You sound lonely," she said finally. Simple observation, no judgment. Daniel's throat tightened. "Yeah," he admitted, "I am." When they finally hung up, Daniel sat in his office chair, staring at the Auckland city lights spread below his window. He felt more alive than he had in months. The conversation had been real. No networking, no performance, no careful image management, just 2 people talking honestly about their lives. He wanted more of that. He wanted more of her. The realization scared him. Over the next 15 days, they texted daily. Good morning messages, photos. Kauhai drew a picture at daycare. Daniel sent an image of a ridiculous presentation slide from a meeting. Questions about each other's days. Maria asked about his kids, and he found himself describing them more honestly than he had to anyone. Noah's anger about the divorce that manifested as sullen silence. Sophie's attempts to fix everything by being perfect, his helplessness watching them hurt. Maria shared too. Her dream of leaving call center work, maybe training as a nurse, something where helping people was the actual job, not something you squeezed between metrics. But nursing courses required money and time she didn't have. Her daughter's intelligence. How Kauhai asked questions that revealed she saw more than 6-year-olds should have to see. The small apartment in Glen Innes they rented, 40 square meters, but Maria kept it spotless and filled with second-hand books. The neighbor who babysat sometimes in exchange for Maria, watching her kids other times. The ecosystem of mutual aid that existed in neighborhoods where people couldn't afford to pay for services. Daniel learned the texture of her life through these messages. The pride she took in small things, Kauhai's reading level, a positive customer review at work, finding vegetables on sale. The quiet resilience required to build a decent life on insufficient resources. He'd always known theoretically that people struggled, but knowing abstractly and knowing Maria specifically were entirely different. She wasn't a statistic or a social problem. She was a woman with a sharp sense of humor, deep capacity for love, and dignity that wealth couldn't purchase. Daniel realized he was falling for her. Not the dramatic falling of movies, but the gradual recognition that he wanted to know what she thought about things, wanted to make her laugh, wanted to be someone she looked forward to hearing from. On the 12th day of their texting, he took a risk. "Would you and Kauhai want to have lunch this Saturday? Nothing fancy, wherever you'd like." The message sat on delivered for 7 minutes. Daniel paced his office. Too much. He'd misread everything. She was being polite to someone who'd helped her once, nothing more. Then 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Okay," the message said. There's a cafe in Glen Innes we like. Casual, kid-friendly. 1 p.m.? Daniel arrived 15 minutes early, nervous in a way he hadn't been since his 20s. The cafe was called Little Bird, a modest place with mismatched chairs and local art on walls. The kind of spot he'd never have entered in his usual life, would have dismissed as beneath his standards. He felt ashamed of that now. Maria and Kauhai arrived exactly at 1. Maria wore jeans and a simple green top, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful. Kauhai wore a bright yellow dress, the same color as her name. Daniel remembered reading that Kauhai was a native tree with yellow flowers, and bounced with recovered energy. "Daniel!" the girl exclaimed, as if they were old friends rather than having met once while she was feverish. She hugged his leg unself-consciously. Maria smiled, something tentative but real. "Thanks for coming all the way out here," she said. Daniel wanted to say he'd have driven anywhere, done anything for this. Managed to just say, "Thanks for inviting me." They ordered simple food, fish and chips for Kauhai, chicken sandwiches for the adults, coffee for Maria and Daniel. The conversation flowed easier than it had any right to. Kauhai chattered about school, about her best friend Aroha, about a story she was writing about a magic pohutukawa tree. She was bright, articulate, completely unself-conscious. Daniel found himself genuinely charmed. When Kauhai ran off to look at the toys in the cafe's kids' corner, Maria watched her with an expression of pure love. "She's amazing," Daniel said. Maria nodded. "She is. She's the reason I keep going when everything feels impossible." She looked at him. Her father left before she was born, didn't want the responsibility, so it's been us two against the world since she was born. No bitterness in her voice, just fact. "His loss," Daniel said. He meant it. They talked for 2 hours, about Auckland, about their childhoods. Maria had grown up in Rotorua, moved to Auckland for work opportunities that never quite materialized into stability. Daniel had grown up in privilege, private schools and overseas holidays, opportunities he'd taken for granted until confronted with someone who'd worked 3 times harder for a fraction of the outcome. The inequality was almost obscene when stated plainly. "Do you ever resent it?" Daniel asked carefully. "People like me who had everything handed to them?" Maria considered this seriously. "Sometimes," she admitted. "Not you specifically, but the system, yeah. The way people think poverty is always a personal failure, like I just need to work harder, make better choices. I work hard, I make good choices. I'm still one emergency away from complete disaster. Meanwhile, you could fail upward and still land in comfort." She paused. "But I don't resent you as a person. You didn't design the system. And you're here, actually trying to understand. That's more than most do." Daniel felt the weight of that, the responsibility of awareness. When they left the cafe, Kauhai held both their hands, swinging between them, chattering happily. In the parking lot, Daniel walked them to Maria's car, a 15-year-old Toyota that had seen better years. Before she could open the door, he turned to her. "Can I see you again?" he asked. Just the two of them this time, the subtext clear. Maria's expression showed conflict, fear and hope warring. "Daniel, She glanced at Kauhai, who was already buckled in her car seat, distracted by a book. "This is complicated. We're from different worlds. You know that, right?" "I know," Daniel said. "I also know I haven't felt this alive in years. I know talking to you is the best part of my day. I know I want to keep knowing you, if you'll let me." Maria looked at him for a long moment. Then, decision made, she stepped closer and kissed him. Brief, soft, over before he could fully register it, but real, undeniable. "My place, Wednesday evening," she said quietly, "after I put Kauhai to bed. 8:30. I'll text you the address." She got in her car and drove away. Daniel stood in the parking lot, hand touching his lips where hers had been, feeling like the world had just rearranged itself into something entirely new. Wednesday evening arrived with an agonizing slowness. Daniel finished work early, went home, changed clothes 3 times, settled on casual dark jeans, grey sweater, nothing that screamed trying too hard. He drove to Glen Innes with a bottle of wine he'd agonized over selecting, not too expensive to be insulting, not too cheap to seem careless. The apartment building was a plain three-story block, weathered but well-maintained. Mariah's unit was on the second floor. He knocked at 8:30 exactly. She answered wearing soft grey pants and an oversized cardigan, barefoot, hair damp from a recent shower. She looked more beautiful than anyone had a right to. "Hi," she said, shy suddenly, different from the confident woman at the cafe. "Come in." The apartment was tiny. Daniel could take it all in from the doorway, combined living room and kitchen, a hallway leading to what must be a bedroom and bathroom. That was it. But it was immaculate. Second-hand furniture arranged thoughtfully, Kohai's drawings covering one wall in a colorful gallery, plants on the windowsill, books stacked in neat piles. It smelled like vanilla and something cooking. "I made dinner," Mariah said, following his gaze. "Nothing fancy, just pasta and a simple sauce. I wasn't sure if you'd eaten." Daniel held up the wine. She took it, examined the label, raised an eyebrow. "This is a $60 bottle," she said. "I Googled wine prices before you arrived, just in case you did something like this." Her tone was amused, gently mocking. Daniel laughed, caught. "Guilty. Is it too much?" Mariah shrugged. "It's already here. We'll drink it, and I'll feel fancy for one night." She opened it expertly, clearly not her first wine bottle, and poured 2 glasses. They sat at her small kitchen table, pasta served on mismatched plates that somehow made the meal feel intimate rather than shabby. The food was simple but good, the sauce rich with garlic and tomato and herbs. They ate and talked, and the conversation had a different quality than their previous meetings. More honest, more vulnerable. The wine helped, but it was more than that. This was her space, her territory. She didn't have to perform here. "Tell me about your kids," Mariah said. "Really tell me, not the sanitized version." Daniel sipped his wine, gathering thoughts. "Noah, my eldest, he's angry. At me, at his mother, at the divorce. Won't talk about it, just retreats to his room and plays video games for hours. I try to connect, ask about school or friends, get one-word answers. Sophie, she's the opposite. Tries to fix everything, asks if I'm eating enough, if I'm sleeping okay. She's 10 and acts like she's my mother. It kills me." His voice cracked slightly. "I see them every other weekend and they feel like strangers. I built a company, made millions, and I'm failing at the only thing that actually matters." Mariah reached across the table, covered his hand with hers. The touch was grounding, warm. "You're showing up," she said quietly. "You're trying. That counts for more than you think." Daniel turned his hand over, lacing their fingers together. "Cowhigh is lucky to have you," he said. "The way she talks, the way she thinks. That's all you. You're doing alone what I'm failing to do with help and resources." Mariah's eyes shimmered. "Some days I'm not sure I'm doing it right. I work so much. She's at daycare or with neighbors. I can't afford dance classes or music lessons or the things other kids have. What if I'm failing her?" "You're not," Daniel said with absolute certainty. "She's loved. She's secure. She knows she matters. That's everything." They held the eye contact for a long moment, and something shifted in the air between them. Mariah stood, still holding his hand, and led him to the small couch. They sat close, her body angled toward his. "I need to tell you something," she said. "I'm scared. Of this. Of you. Of how much I already like you. Because you're going to realize eventually that I come with complications. A 6-year-old daughter. A job that pays nothing. Student debt from a degree I never finished. 0 savings. I live paycheck to paycheck, Daniel. One car breakdown, one unexpected bill, and my whole life collapses. That's not the kind of woman men like you end up with." Daniel absorbed the fear in her words, the defensive armor she was building. "Men like me," he repeated. "What does that mean?" Mariah pulled her hand back, wrapped her arms around herself. "Rich, successful, from a world where people have safety nets and second chances. Your ex-wife probably had a degree, a career, came from a good family. I bet your mother expects you to date lawyers or doctors or businesswomen, not call center operators living in Glen Innes with kids from men who abandoned them." She wasn't wrong. Daniel's mother, Eleanor Wright, 71 years old and still running her commercial real estate company, absolutely had expectations. His ex-wife Sarah had been a corporate lawyer, private school educated, appropriate in every way, except for the fact that they'd made each other miserable. "My mother's expectations aren't my life," Daniel said carefully. "Neither is my ex-wife. I'm not looking for appropriate. I'm looking for real. And this," he gestured between them, "this feels more real than anything I've had in years." Maria searched his face, looking for the lie, the crack in the facade. Daniel held her gaze, letting her see the truth. Finally, she leaned in and kissed him properly. Not the brief press from the parking lot, but deep and searching, her hands sliding into his hair, his arms wrapping around her waist. They kissed until breathing became difficult, until the world narrowed to just the two of them on this worn couch, in this tiny apartment that felt more like home than his penthouse ever had. When they broke apart, Maria rested her forehead against his. "Stay," she whispered. "I want you to stay." Daniel did. They moved to her bedroom, small, barely space for the double bed and a dresser, but clean sheets that smelled like lavender. They made love slowly, carefully, learning each other's bodies with attention and tenderness. Afterwards, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "This is going to be complicated," Maria said into the darkness. Daniel kissed the top of her head. "I know. Worth it, though." She tilted her face up to his. "Promise me something. If this gets too hard, if your world and mine don't fit together, you'll be honest. You won't drag it out because you feel sorry for me." "I don't feel sorry for you," Daniel said firmly. "I feel lucky to know you. And yes, I promise honesty. Both ways." Maria nodded against his chest. They fell asleep like that, comfortable in a way that should have taken months to build, but somehow felt immediate. Daniel woke at 6 a.m. to his phone alarm. Maria stirred, sleepy and soft. "You have to go?" she asked. "Early meeting," Daniel said apologetically. "But I'll text you." He kissed her slowly, reluctant to leave. When he finally did, driving through the empty morning streets back to Remuera, he felt the return to his world like a physical transition. The streets got cleaner, the houses larger, the hedges more manicured. 2 different New Zealands, 10 kilometers apart. The next 3 weeks were the happiest Daniel could remember. They saw each other whenever schedules allowed. Dinner at modest restaurants Maria chose, walks through Cornwall Park with Kohai, one movie night at his place when his kids were with Sarah, where Maria seemed overwhelmed by the space, but gradually relaxed. The chemistry was undeniable, the connection deepened. Daniel found himself thinking about futures, introducing her to Noah and Sophie properly, spending holidays together, maybe eventually more. But he kept these thoughts private, not wanting to pressure her or move too fast. Then his mother found out. Daniel made the mistake of mentioning Maria during a Sunday lunch at Eleanor's Remuera estate, a sprawling property with harbour views and staff. He'd said it casually. "I've been seeing someone," thinking his mother would be pleased he was moving on from the divorce. Eleanor's eyes had lit up with interest. "Wonderful! What's her name? What does she do?" And Daniel, idiot that he was, told the truth. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. "A call center operator," Eleanor repeated, her tone suggesting he'd said drug dealer or criminal. "From where?" "Glen Innes. She has a daughter, Kohai. She's 6. They're wonderful, Mum." Eleanor set down her wineglass with precision. "Daniel, darling, I understand you're lonely after the divorce, but you need to think clearly. You're a public figure in Auckland business. Your company is about to go through acquisition negotiations. Your personal life reflects on Right Tech's image. Dating someone from," she paused delicately, "challenging circumstances, with a child from another relationship that raises questions." Daniel felt his jaw tighten. "Questions about what? My judgment? My character?" Eleanor sighed. "About your stability, about whether you're making decisions emotionally rather than rationally, and frankly, about what she wants from you." "She doesn't want anything from me," Daniel said, voice hard. "She's refused every offer of help I've made. She's proud and independent and works harder than most people I know." Eleanor's expression was sympathetic but unyielding. I'm sure she's a lovely person, but Daniel, you have children to consider. You're introducing Noah and Sophie to random women now. What kind of example does that set? And what happens when this relationship runs its course and you've attached them to her daughter? Have you thought this through at all? Daniel stood abruptly. Her name is Mariah, not someone from challenging circumstances or this relationship. She's a person I care about deeply, and if you can't respect that, we don't have much to talk about. He left without finishing lunch, anger pulsing through him, but his mother's words stuck like burrs. Not because they were right, they weren't, but because he knew others would think the same things. His business partners, his friends from the yacht club, Sarah's lawyer if she decided to make an issue of it in custody arrangements. His world was watching, judging, finding Mariah insufficient by standards that had nothing to do with who she actually was. The week after the confrontation with his mother, things began unraveling. Sarah, his ex-wife, somehow heard about Mariah, probably through the efficient gossip network of Auckland's wealthy suburbs. She called him on a Thursday evening, her voice sharp with manufactured concern. Daniel, I heard you're seeing someone with a young child. I need to know who you're exposing Noah and Sophie to. Daniel kept his tone even. Her name is Mariah. She's kind, responsible, and the kids have barely met her. This isn't your business, Sarah. It absolutely is my business when it concerns our children's welfare, Sarah shot back. I'm not comfortable with you introducing them to unstable situations. A single mother you barely know. What's her background? Has she been vetted? Vetted, like Mariah was a security risk. She's a person, not a threat assessment, Daniel said, exhaustion creeping into his voice. The kids are fine. This is you trying to control something that isn't yours to control anymore. Sarah's laugh was cold. We'll see what the family court thinks about that. My lawyer's already drafting a motion to review custody arrangements. If you're making reckless choices, I have a responsibility to protect Noah and Sophie. The call ended badly. Daniel sat in his office staring at nothing. He knew Sarah's threat wasn't empty. She had the resources and vindictiveness to make custody complicated. And if a judge started asking questions about his judgment, about introducing children to new partners too quickly, about the appropriateness of his relationship choices, what would he say? That he'd fallen for a woman he met by chance on a roadside? That sounded impulsive, irrational, exactly what Sarah would argue. At work, the pressure mounted differently. His business partner Marcus pulled him aside after a meeting. Mate, I heard something. You're dating someone significantly younger, from a different, socio-economic background. Marcus tried to sound casual, concerned friend rather than judgment. Just want to make sure you're thinking clearly. The acquisition talks with Silver Lake Tech are at a sensitive stage. We need you focused, not distracted. Daniel felt something snap inside. My personal life doesn't affect my work performance. I've never missed a deadline or a meeting because of Mariah. Marcus held up his hands defensively. Not saying you have, just saying perception matters. Clients, investors, they look at the whole picture. You want them wondering if you're having a midlife crisis. The implication was clear. Dating Mariah was evidence of instability, poor judgment, crisis. Not love, not genuine connection, crisis. That evening, Daniel was supposed to have dinner with Mariah at her apartment. He arrived late, distracted, carrying the weight of everyone's opinions like physical chains. Mariah noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked after they'd eaten and Kauai was asleep. They sat on her couch, but Daniel felt distant, even sitting close. "Just work stress," he said, the lie sitting heavy. Mariah studied him. "Don't do that. Don't shut me out. What's actually wrong?" Daniel ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "Everything. My ex-wife is threatening custody issues because I'm seeing you. My mother thinks you're inappropriate. My business partner thinks I'm having a crisis. Everyone in my life is judging this, judging us, and I don't know how to make it stop." The words came out harsher than intended. Mariah went very still. "Inappropriate," she repeated quietly. "That's the word your mother used?" About me? Daniel realized his mistake immediately. Not about you as a person. About the situation, the optics, He was making it worse. Mariah stood, wrapped her arms around herself. The optics, right. The optics of a wealthy CEO dating a poor call center worker. That doesn't look good for your image. Her voice was carefully controlled, but Daniel heard the hurt underneath. That's not what I meant, he said, standing too. I don't care about optics. I care about you. Mariah turned to face him. Do you? Because it sounds like you care a lot about what everyone else thinks, about your mother's approval, your business partner's opinion, your ex-wife's threats. That's not fair, Daniel said, defensive now. You don't understand the pressure. My entire professional reputation is tied to perception. My custody of my kids depends on appearing stable. I can't just ignore what people think. Mariah laughed, bitter. Must be nice to have the option. I've never had the luxury of worrying about optics, Daniel. I worry about keeping the lights on and food in the cupboard. But sure, your reputation is the real hardship here. The sarcasm landed like a slap. Daniel felt his own anger rising. You don't understand how complicated this is. It's not just about us. There are consequences. For you, Mariah interrupted. Consequences for you. Your business, your custody, your reputation. What about consequences for me? I'm falling for someone who apparently has a whole world of people telling him I'm not good enough. How long before you start believing them? The question hung between them, sharp and accusing. Daniel opened his mouth to deny it, to reassure her, but he hesitated half a second too long. Mariah saw it. Something in her expression shattered and rebuilt harder. You already do, she said softly. You already think maybe they're right. No, Daniel said, but it sounded weak even to him. This is harder than I expected. The pushback, the judgment. I didn't anticipate how much my world would resist this. Mariah nodded slowly. Your world, not our world. Your world that I don't fit into. She moved to the door, opened it. I think you should go. Daniel didn't move. Mariah, please, let's talk about this. She shook her head. There's nothing to talk about. You're ashamed of me. Maybe not consciously. Maybe you're telling yourself you're not, but you are. Otherwise, you'd tell all those people to shut up. You'd choose this without hesitation. I am choosing this, Daniel protested. Mariah's smile was sad, knowing. No, you're trying to choose this while also keeping everyone else happy. That's not the same thing. And I won't be someone's guilty pleasure, Daniel. I won't be the relationship you have to defend and justify and apologize for. I deserve better than that. Kauhai deserves better than that. She was right. Daniel knew she was right. But admitting it meant acknowledging he'd failed at the one thing that mattered most in months. What are you saying? He asked, though he already knew. I'm saying this was a mistake, Mariah said, her voice breaking slightly despite the firmness. We're from different worlds, and I was stupid to think that didn't matter. But it does. It always has. You need to go now. Daniel wanted to argue, to fix this, to promise he'd do better, but what promise could he make that he hadn't already broken? He walked to the door, stopped beside her. I'm sorry, he whispered. Mariah didn't look at him. Me too. He left. The door closed behind him with a quiet click that sounded like finality. The next 4 weeks were terrible. Daniel threw himself into work, closed the Silver Lake acquisition, impressed everyone with his focus and determination. His mother was pleased when he stopped mentioning Mariah. Sarah dropped the custody challenge once she realized he wasn't seeing anyone anymore. His life returned to exactly what it had been before. Successful, empty, hollow. He functioned perfectly and felt nothing. At night in his massive penthouse, he stared at Mariah's contact in his phone. She hadn't blocked him. She just wasn't texting. Neither was he. What would he say? Sorry I proved you right. Sorry I chose comfort over courage. His kids noticed something was wrong during their weekend visit. Sophie asked if he was sick because he seemed sad. Noah, surprisingly, was more direct. You broke up with her, didn't you? The woman you were seeing. Daniel looked at his son in surprise. How did you know I was seeing someone? Noah shrugged. You seemed different for a while. less robotic. Then you went back to normal. Robotic. His 13-year-old thought he was robotic. I didn't exactly break up with her, Daniel said carefully. It was complicated. Because Mum made it complicated? Noah asked. Or because Grandma didn't approve? The perceptiveness was startling. Both, I guess, and other things. Noah looked at him with something like disappointment. That's weak, Dad. If you liked her, who cares what anyone else thinks? Out of the mouths of teenagers. Daniel felt the truth of it like a punch. He'd been weak. He'd let fear and social pressure override something real. He'd chosen his world's approval over Mariah's respect. And for what? He was more miserable now than he'd been before meeting her. The success felt more meaningless, the achievements more hollow. That night, after dropping the kids back at Sarah's, Daniel sat in his car and made a decision. Not an impulsive one, but careful, strategic. If he was going to do this right, he needed to change fundamentally, not just promise to try harder. He needed to make choices that couldn't be unmade, commit in ways that proved sincerity through action rather than words. The next morning, he called his lawyer and his financial advisor. I want to sell 30% of Right Tech, he told them. They thought he was insane. He didn't care. Over the following 2 weeks, he restructured his entire life. The 30% sale netted $18 million. He used it to establish a charitable trust, the Thompson Foundation, named after Mariah, though she didn't know it yet. The foundation's purpose was providing scholarships and financial support for single mothers pursuing professional training and education. Nursing, teaching, technical skills, whatever, would lead to stable careers. He hired staff, established criteria, publicized the opportunity. Within days, applications flooded in. 47 women in the first week alone, each with stories like Mariah's, working hard, dreaming of more, trapped by circumstance and lack of resources. He confronted his mother at her estate, unannounced. I'm going to say this once, he told Eleanor. My personal life is not your business. If you can't accept the choices I make about who I love, then we need to significantly reduce contact. I won't have you poisoning my relationships with judgment and snobbery. Eleanor looked shocked. Daniel had never spoken to her this way. And if you ever speak about Mariah disrespectfully again, we're done, completely. I'm grateful for everything you've given me, but I'm done living according to your standards. He left before she could respond. He dealt with Sarah through lawyers, fought her custody challenge properly this time, and won shared custody 50-50. The judge noted his stability, his commitment, his proactive engagement with his children's lives. With Marcus, he was blunt. My personal life isn't up for discussion. If you or anyone else at Right Tech has concerns about my work performance, address those specifically. Otherwise, stay out of it. The message was received. Then, on a Tuesday evening 4 weeks after their fight, Daniel drove to Glen Innes. Mariah finished her shift at 10:15 p.m. The late shift was exhausting, 8 hours of handling angry customers who somehow blamed her personally for their billing errors or connection problems. Her feet ached. Her voice was hoarse from maintaining cheerful professionalism. All she wanted was to get home, check on Kauhai with the neighbor who was babysitting, and collapse into bed. She pushed through the call center's exit door into the parking lot, the cool night air a relief after the recycled office atmosphere. That's when she saw him, Daniel leaning against his BMW in the parking lot, hands in his pockets, looking nervous. Mariah stopped walking. Her heart did something complicated, a leap of hope immediately crushed by protective anger. No. She'd spent 4 weeks rebuilding her walls, convincing herself she'd been right to end things, that the pain would fade. Seeing him undid all of it in seconds. "What are you doing here?" she asked, keeping her distance, her voice carefully neutral. Daniel straightened. "I needed to see you, to talk. Please, just 5 minutes." Mariah crossed her arms. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away, protect herself from more disappointment. But she saw something different in his expression, not pleading or guilt, something more like determination. 5 minutes, she agreed, "then I'm going home." Daniel nodded gratefully. I need to tell you what I've done, not what I'm going to do or planning to do, what I've already done. He took a breath. I sold 30% of my company, $18 million. I used it to create a foundation that provides scholarships for single mothers to pursue professional training. Maria blinked, processing. You what? Daniel continued, speaking quickly like he was afraid she'd interrupt. The Thompson Foundation. It's named after you. We've already accepted 47 applications in 3 weeks. Women training to be nurses, teachers, electricians, accountants. Whatever they need to build stable careers. Each scholarship covers tuition, provides a living stipend, includes childcare support. Maria felt something crack in her chest. Why? She whispered. Daniel met her eyes. Because you showed me that the problem isn't individual failure. It's systemic barriers, lack of opportunity, not lack of effort. I can't fix the whole system, but I can create openings. I confronted my mother, he continued. Told her if she couldn't accept my choices, we were done. I haven't spoken to her in 3 weeks. She's trying to reach out now, but on my terms. I fought Sarah's custody challenge properly and won 50-50 shared custody. I made it clear to everyone at work that my personal life isn't their concern. He stepped closer. Maria's defenses were crumbling. I'm not telling you this to impress you or to prove I'm some kind of hero. I'm telling you because I failed you before. I let fear control me. I chose comfort over courage, and I've spent 4 weeks understanding that losing you was the worst consequence of all. Maria's eyes were wet. Daniel, he held up a hand gently. I'm not done. I have a proposal, not the romantic kind, a business one. Despite everything, Maria almost laughed at the clarification. The foundation needs someone to manage applications, interview candidates, coordinate with training programs. Someone who understands what these women are going through because she's lived it. The salary is $61,000 a year, and the first scholarship recipient, if she wants it, is you. Nursing training, fully funded. Maria stepped back. No, that's... You can't just create a job for me. That's charity. Daniel shook his head firmly. It's not charity. I need someone real doing this work. Someone the applicants will trust. You're qualified. You're organized, hard-working, empathetic. And the scholarship isn't because we're whatever we are. It's because you meet every criterion we established. Single mother, working full-time, clear career goal, financial need. You'd qualify even if I'd never met you. He paused. But I won't lie and say I didn't hope offering this would give me a chance to prove I've changed. Maria's mind raced. 61,000 a year. Nursing training funded, a job helping other women like her. It was everything she'd dreamed of and been afraid to hope for, but accepting it from Daniel after everything that happened. Why should I believe you won't change your mind again? She asked, the fear roar in her voice. Next time someone pressures you, next time it gets hard, what's different? Daniel held her gaze steadily. Because I've already made the hard choices. I've already burned the bridges that needed burning. I'm not asking you to trust promises. I'm asking you to trust actions. Maria searched his face, looking for doubt or hesitation, found none. I need time, she said finally, to think about the job, the scholarship, all of it. And if I accept, we go slowly on the personal stuff. No jumping back into a relationship. You prove through consistency, not grand gestures. Daniel nodded immediately. Whatever you need, whatever timeline works for you. Maria allowed herself a small smile. How did you know I'd be working late shift? Daniel looked sheepish. I've been checking the call center parking lot for 3 days at different times. Tonight I got lucky. The admission was so earnest, so ridiculous, that Maria laughed genuinely for the first time in weeks. That's borderline stalking. Daniel winced. I know. I'm sorry. I was desperate. Maria shook her head, but she was still smiling. Go home, Daniel. I'll call you in a few days. She turned to walk to her car. Maria, he called after her. She turned back. Thank you for listening. That's more than I deserved. She drove home with her heart pounding, mind spinning. Could people really change? Could privilege learn to see beyond itself? Could love survive class divide and social pressure? 3 days later, she called him. I want to meet the foundation staff, see the setup, understand what the job actually entails before I decide. Daniel arranged it immediately. The foundation office was modest, not the fancy glass building she'd feared, but a practical space in Mount Eden with actual working desks and real staff. 2 women and 1 man, all professional but warm, none of them looking at Maria like she was Daniel's charity case. They walked her through the work: intake interviews, verification of applications, coordination with education providers, follow-up support for scholarship recipients. It was real work, meaningful work, work she could do well. After the tour, alone in Daniel's car, she said, I'll take the job and I'll accept the scholarship, but I'm paying back the scholarship amount once I'm working as a nurse. I don't care if that takes 10 years. Daniel started to protest, stopped himself. Okay, if that's what you need. Mariah nodded. And we're not dating. We're 2 people who work together and are figuring things out. Clear? Daniel smiled. Crystal clear. But over the following 8 months, figuring things out evolved naturally into something more. Mariah started at the foundation in April, began nursing courses in May. The work was challenging but fulfilling. Every application she reviewed was someone like her, someone who needed a chance. She interviewed women who cried with relief at being accepted, who sent updates about their progress, who transformed from hopeless to hopeful. Daniel kept his distance professionally, never used his position as founder to pressure or influence her, but they had coffee sometimes, then lunch, then dinner after she'd put Kohai to bed. The friendship rebuilt slowly, carefully, on foundation of mutual respect rather than desperation or rescue fantasies. In June, Daniel formally introduced Maria to Noah and Sophie, not as his girlfriend, as his friend who worked at his foundation and had a daughter near their age. The kids were wary initially, but warmed when Kohai charmed them completely with her energy and stories. They spent a day at Cornwall Park, all 5 of them, flying kites and eating ice cream. It was simple, easy, normal. Maria watched Daniel with his children and saw him truly present, not performing. Noah even laughed at Daniel's terrible jokes. Sophie held Kohai's hand while they ran ahead on the path. In August, Eleanor Wright requested a meeting with Maria. Daniel was furious when he found out, ready to intervene. Maria stopped him. I can handle your mother. They met at a cafe. Eleanor's choice, a subtle power play, somewhere expensive enough to be intimidating. But Maria had faced worse than judgmental, wealthy women. She'd faced eviction notices and empty cupboards, and the fear of failing her daughter. Eleanor Wright was nothing. The older woman was polite, cold. I wanted to understand what my son sees in you, she said without preamble. Maria smiled thinly. I'm not here to convince you of anything, Mrs. Wright. Daniel and I are adults. Your approval isn't required. Eleanor's eyebrows rose slightly. Bold. Maria shrugged. Honest. I know you think I'm after his money. I'm not. I'm paying back my scholarship. I work for the salary I earn. And if Daniel and I don't work out romantically, I'll still have built a life I'm proud of. I don't need him. I choose him. There's a difference. Something shifted in Eleanor's expression. Maybe respect, maybe surprise. He's changed since meeting you. More present, more purposeful. It wasn't quite approval, but it wasn't hostility either. They parted with careful politeness. Daniel asked how it went. Your mother and I understand each other now, Maria said. We'll never be best friends, but we've established boundaries. By October, Maria was in her 2nd semester of nursing training, excelling in her courses while working part-time at the foundation. She'd moved to a better apartment, not fancy but bigger, safer, in a better school zone for Kauhai. She'd paid for it herself, with her foundation salary, refused Daniel's offers of help. Her independence mattered. She needed to know she was building this life through her own effort, that she wasn't Eliza Doolittle being transformed by a wealthy benefactor. Daniel understood. He was learning that love wasn't about saving someone. It was about standing beside them while they saved themselves. On a Sunday morning in early November, Daniel came to Maria's new apartment for breakfast. Nothing fancy. She'd made pancakes, he'd brought fresh fruit and coffee. Kohai was at a friend's house for a play date. They ate at her kitchen table, sun streaming through the windows, comfortable silence between bites. "I have something to tell you," Maria said. Daniel looked up. "The foundation accepted a new scholarship recipient yesterday. Her name is Hannah. She's 28, has 3 kids, working 2 jobs, wants to train as a plumber. Her application made me cry." Daniel smiled. "That's amazing." Maria nodded. "She reminded me of who I was 8 months ago, and I realized I'm not that person anymore. Not because you rescued me, but because I had a chance, and I took it." She reached across the table, took his hand. "Thank you for giving me that chance." Daniel squeezed her fingers. "You did the work. You're doing the work. I just opened a door. You walked through it." They held the look, the connection deeper than it had been in the passionate early days. This was built on something sturdier than chemistry, on respect, on equality, on choice. "I love you," Maria said. She'd been afraid to say it before, afraid it would give him power or make her vulnerable. But she understood now that love freely given from a place of security was different from love offered from desperation. "I love you too," Daniel said, simple and sure. They finished breakfast, did dishes together, a domestic routine that would have bored Daniel a year ago, but now felt like everything he'd been missing. Later, they walked to the nearby park, hand in hand, watching kids play on the playground. A simple Sunday in Auckland. Nothing fancy, nothing performative. Just 2 people who'd found each other through unlikely circumstances and built something real through intentional choice. And there, in that park in Glen Innes, watching children chase each other across grass while the pohutukawa trees bloomed red around them, Daniel understood what wealth actually meant. Not the penthouse or the BMW or the business success. Those were tools, resources, nothing more. Real wealth was this. Connection with someone who saw him truly, partnership built on respect rather than transaction, a life with meaning beyond achievement. It wasn't about money or status or what world you came from. It was about showing up, about choosing courage over comfort, about becoming someone worthy of being chosen in return. Some transformations happened in dramatic moments, but the ones that lasted happened slowly, through consistent action, through proving yourself day after ordinary day. And sometimes $2 could break everything, or a stranger stopping his car could begin building it all back together in ways neither person expected. He'd spent 44 years measuring success in all the wrong ways. Now he knew better. This was wealth. This was everything. This was home. Yeah.